The night air was thick with the scent of rain and asphalt, a cold drizzle blurring the neon lights that flickered over the city streets. James's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the steering wheel, his eyes scanning for any sign of danger. Being a single dad wasn't easy, but tonight, his exhaustion had nothing to do with the long hours at his night shift. Tonight, it was worry, an instinct gnawing at him like a persistent shadow. Earlier that evening, he had clocked out from his third job, his routine of survival that barely allowed him to breathe, let alone sleep. The quiet hum of the car engine mixed with the soft cries of his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, asleep in her car seat behind him. She had been sniffling all day, and though she didn't say much, her small hand gripping his shirt reminded him why he pushed through the exhaustion every single day. She was everything. The city streets glimmered with reflections of people leaving bars, laughter spilling into the night like careless sparks. That was when James saw her, a woman slumped against the curb, her heels digging unevenly into the wet pavement, her designer coat damp from the drizzle. Her name was Miranda Hizabas, always poised, always sharp, always untouchable in the office. But here she was, a human in need, her usually confident eyes clouded with intoxication and fear. James hesitated for a split second. This wasn't his job, he reminded himself. She was the kind of person who could never be indebted to anyone. She was the boss everyone admired, feared, maybe even resented, in her way, but the small voice in his chest, the same one that made him stop when he saw a lost child or a stray animal, nudged him forward. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice low, careful not to startle her. Her head lolled slightly, and she blinked up at him, confusion etched across her face. I think I'm fine," she slurred. "I can handle it." James shook his head gently. "You can't? Come on, let me help." And that's how it happened. He guided her to his car, careful not to let her stumble. She smelled of expensive perfume and cheap whiskey, a clash that made his stomach twist. But he ignored it. Tonight, she wasn't Miranda, the untouchable executive. Tonight, she was someone vulnerable, someone human. The ride was quiet, except for the occasional hiccup of laughter or cough from her. He kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror, unsure if she would protest. Finally, she whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Thank you." James smiled faintly, forcing cheerfulness into his exhausted voice. "Don't mention it. Just get home safe." He dropped her at a cab stand near her apartment and watched as she struggled to give the driver the right directions. She didn't offer him anything, no money, no gratitude in grand gestures, just a shaky wave before the cab pulled away. The next day, James was back in the office, tired-eyed but determined to make the day count. His life felt like a constant balancing act. Work, bills, Lily, responsibilities. He never expected Miranda to even acknowledge him after last night. She had the power to ignore him, to pretend nothing had happened, to carry on as if he was invisible. But when he walked into the office, she was there, waiting. Not in a scolding way, not in a dismissive way. She simply watched him from across the room, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at her lips. When their eyes met, she didn't turn away. She didn't pretend to forget. It was startling, to say the least. Later that afternoon, Miranda called him into her office. James hesitated outside the polished door, unsure if this was going to be a confrontation, a reprimand, or something worse. "Come in," she said, voice steady, confident but softer than he had ever heard it. James stepped inside, hands clasped together, heart thudding. She gestured to the chair opposite her desk. "I wanted to say something," she began, leaning forward slightly. "Last night, you helped me when I couldn't help myself. I've worked with a lot of people, James, but very few have the courage to extend kindness when there's nothing in it for them. You didn't have to do that. Most would have just walked past." James felt heat rise to his cheeks, the kind that came with both embarrassment and pride. "I just did what anyone would," he said softly. Miranda's gaze sharpened, piercing yet warm. "No, James, most wouldn't. You helped me when I was at my lowest. That takes something rare, something real, and I want you to know, I won't forget it." The sincerity in her voice struck him harder than he expected. In that moment, he realized that kindness had a ripple effect far beyond the immediate act. He had helped her without expectation, without strategy, and somehow, that honesty had carved a crack in the polished walls she kept around herself. Over the next few weeks, Miranda's attitude toward him shifted subtly but meaningfully. She checked in on him more often, listened when he spoke, and even advocated for him when promotions came up. For James, a single dad barely scraping by, these small gestures were monumental. But beyond career benefits, it was the acknowledgement, the recognition of his humanity that mattered most. One rainy afternoon, after Lily's school recital, James found himself opening up to Miranda in a way he hadn't expected. She had stopped by the office to drop off some paperwork and, seeing him in the corridor, lingered to chat. "You seem tired," she said. Her voice carried no judgment, only concern. "I am," James admitted. "It's just everything, you know? Lily, bills, work. It's a lot," Miranda nodded, understanding, not patronizing. "I get it more than you think. My life isn't perfect either, James. People think it's all power and money. but sometimes I feel like I'm drowning under expectations. Last night, you reminded me that there are still good people out there. People who act without an agenda. People who see others as humans first. That meant more to me than I can say." James blinked, startled. He had never expected his act of kindness to resonate so deeply. But hearing it now, from someone he had always thought was untouchable, he felt a shift within himself, a reminder that doing good, no matter how small, mattered not just for others, but for the person giving it. Days turned into weeks, and their interactions grew into a genuine friendship. Not the kind that required superficial politeness, but the kind that recognized struggles, celebrated victories, and forgave flaws. James began to notice small changes in himself too: more patience with Lily, more confidence in his work, a renewed sense of hope in life. It wasn't always easy. There were nights when bills piled up, when Lily was sick, or when exhaustion clawed at him like a relentless tide. But remembering that night, when he had helped someone without thinking of himself, gave him strength. Kindness, he realized, was a muscle that grew stronger the more it was exercised. One morning, Miranda approached him with a proposal that would change everything. "We're expanding the project team," she said. "I want you to lead it. You've shown dedication, empathy, and integrity. All the things that don't show up on a resume but matter the most. I want you to have this opportunity." James was stunned. It wasn't just a promotion, it was a lifeline, a chance to provide a better future for Lily without the crushing weight of constant struggle. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down." Miranda smiled, but there was no hint of office pretense, no barrier of power, just genuine respect. "I know you won't. You've already shown me who you are." Months later, as James watched Lily take her first steps on the school stage, her smile radiant under the spotlight, he felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the small victories, not just for the career shift, but for the reminder that life's greatest moments often come from compassion, courage, and the quiet decisions to do what's right. He thought about that rainy night, about the trembling figure he had helped, and how that simple act had transformed not just her life, but his own. In the end, it wasn't recognition or reward that made kindness powerful, it was the truth that every act of humanity, no matter how small, leaves a mark. James knew that he would never forget that night, nor would Miranda, and that was enough. Because in a world where people often pretended to forget, where vulnerability was hidden behind polished facades, they had chosen to see each other, truly see each other. And as he tucked Lily into bed that night, brushing a stray curl from her forehead, he whispered a promise to keep living with courage, to act with kindness, and to remember that every human connection mattered. Life had a strange way of teaching lessons. Sometimes it was through hardship, sometimes through joy, but often it was through a single moment of genuine human connection. James had learned that one night. He had learned that kindness never goes unnoticed. So, when life tests you, when the weight seems unbearable, remember this: helping someone without expectation, showing up when it's hard, being human in a world that often forgets humanity, these are the moments that define us. And perhaps, just perhaps, those moments come back to you in ways you could never imagine, because kindness is never wasted. It returns, sometimes in gratitude, sometimes in opportunity, and sometimes in the simple, powerful recognition of your own worth. And that is the story of how a single dad, exhausted and overworked, saved his drunk boss from trouble and, in doing so, saved a piece of himself. The next day, she didn't pretend to forget, and neither would he. So, if you've ever hesitated to act, to reach out, to help even when it seems inconvenient, remember that a single act of compassion can ripple through lives, change hearts, and open doors you never knew existed. Be kind, be brave, be human. Because